Okay, YouTube, let's make some tape loops. First, I'll show you the basic tools and supplies you'll need to get started. Here's a small Phillips head screwdriver. Non-magnetized tip, of course. This is a nice new razor blade. Here we have a splicing block with the standard edit and crossfade guides. This one is aluminum and has been a dear friend for more than a decade. And this here is splicing tape meant for cassettes. You do not want to use any other kind of tape such as Scotch tape, but more on that later. And of course, some extra blades. Alright, let's move on to the tapes. For today's projects, I'll be using a Quanteggi 472 high bias chrome tape as a donor for all the loops. Any cassette will work, but I'm going for sheer luxury today, so only studio grade will do.
Alright, so I have 20 or so clear shells off camera. We're going to take one apart and gut it so we can get a measurement of how long the loop needs to be. I'm taking out the slip sheets so that we'll be able to see the loop spinning inside when we're done. But any cassette will perform better with both slip sheets left intact. Let's make the most simple loop for this example. It's generally about 5 seconds in duration. I'm just putting one empty gear on the right side of the tape. Pull the nice new donor tape out and route it around the guides. I'm anticipating how much tension there will be when the tape heads push up into the bottom of the tape when inserted into a deck. It's usually better to be a bit on the loose side rather than tight. Too tight, the loop will not play. I lost my China pencil at the moment, so I'm going to mark the tape with this fine Sharpie and then try to cut off the part with the actual ink on the tape.
Once you think you have a good mark, move on over to the splicing block and align your mark with the splice gap. Make sure your hands are nice and clean and try not to handle the tape too much. Orient the tape so that it loops like it's flipping up away from the splicing block. This was where taping on the inside of the loop. The splicing tape should not be on the recording side of the tape where it would be physically running over the record heads. Secure both ends of the loop into the splicing block. No gap. No overlap. Get your splicing tape ready. I never touch this stuff on the sticky side with my fingers. I use the blade to hold it, then cut about a ½ inch piece like this, so I'm checking out where that cut was. And I'm going to place the splicing tape nice and straight and try to press it down on both sides of the edit before removing the razor blade. Remove the loop and inspect it a little bit. Cool. So I repeated that process a bunch of times, off camera, and made sure the loop was a good length, etc. Now let's assemble a bunch of them. Okay, so again, remove the old tape and slip sheets. I like to use the gears from the actual shell I'm going to be using, so I'm cutting off this excess leader. In order to not overly handle the new studio grade loop, I'm using a little plastic stick to help guide the tape into place. Don't use anything metal or magnetized for this or you may mess up your tape and any deck you play it in. Make sure the pressure pad looks good and that the tape is passing through all of the guides correctly. Then close it up. Double check that there's no tape hanging out anywhere it's not supposed to. Then put the 5 screws back in. No need to torque down on the screws. Just tight enough to hold the shell together. Here's the assembled tape loop. You can see the blue splicing tape is on the inside of the loop. Looks pretty good so far.
Okay, so after I repeated the process and got a few of them finished, I'm gonna QC them and make sure they are looping properly and not getting stuck in the deck when inserted. I usually use a pretty standard 4-track deck, like a Porta Studio. Pop it in and hit play, and you should see the loop spinning consistently without hanging up. Looks good, let's keep moving. Next hot tip. Since these shells were tab out, we need to block off the left side of the tab so that the tapes can be recorded onto. Some people use Scotch tape or little plastic pieces to fill the gap in the recording tab, but I like to use hot glue and just seal it off permanently. Since the tape loop is only supposed to be inserted one way in the deck, filling only the left side will also serve as a reminder of which way the tape should be oriented. The way I use tape loops, I prefer always being able to arm the tracks and record, so this is a clean solution to re-tabbing. If your shells have tabs intact, you can skip this step.
Once the glue has dried, I'm just going to cut off the excess here and make sure it's nice and flat on the top of the tape. Let me take this little breather to link some other videos from my channel that show what you can do with tape loops.
Lastly, I'll show you how I packaged the tapes up with some recycled plastic tubing and this bag sealer machine. I printed out some cards with info to my web store and stuff like that, which I'll also link in the video description. Here's the finished product. Super simple. People always ask how I do my tape loops, so I hope this video answers most of your questions. And yeah, these are the basic 5-second loops. But get creative and you can make 20-second loops or even longer with different techniques. You can scan this QR to find links to our website and links to music used in this video. Hope you have a wonderful day, even if you're feeling a bit loopy.